This is True Voice Unfiltered, the podcast where raw truth meets real transformation. I'm your host, Daria Anne, ghostwriter, content strategist, and holistic health warrior. No, I'm not a doctor, nurse, nutritionist, or any kind of medical professional, and this show does not dispense medical advice. I'm just an informed patient sharing what I've learned on my own healing journey. I also interview accomplished authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, and functional medicine practitioners who are transforming lives. If you're ready to break free from the sick care system, reclaim your health, and transform your life, you're in the right place. Let's get unfiltered. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special bonus episode of True Voice Unfiltered. It is still October, so it is still Down Syndrome Awareness Month, and I have a sibling who wanted to come on and talk about our brother Ralph. So this will be part two, really, building upon the first episode I did earlier this month with Mark DiGiovanni, my mother, telling Ralph's story. But today we're going to get another sibling's perspective in addition to mine. So if you haven't listened to the episode for Down Syndrome Awareness Month with Rose DiGiovanni, mother of Ralph DiGiovanni, my older brother, I invite you to listen to that to get her story because it's very compelling. But just as a recap, so Ralph was born on October 4th, 1959, at a time when conventional medical wisdom told parents to put these children in institutions because they had no potential. At least that was the advice of a pediatrician my mother did not know on a morning when she happened to be alone in her hospital room after delivering Ralph the day before and being told that she had this beautiful bundle of fluff. She just happened to be alone in her room at a time when this strange pediatrician walked in and just announced that Ralph was going to be like the tree outside of her window, just like a tree trunk, unable to do anything but just stand there. And he would be a stigma on the family, and since my dad was going to be a doctor, the best thing she could do was put him in an institution, presumably to forget that he even existed. I don't know. But my mother, being only 28 and always having been a very strong woman, just tough, strong, tough in the best way possible, fiercely independent, loving, fiercely protective of her children, threw him out of the room and told him to stay away from her and stay away from her baby, with the understanding that, only really God knew for sure. And when her pediatrician found out, he was so angry, and he talked to my parents and told them they were all shades of gray to have Ralph tested and to work with him. And he's a success story, right? He lived to be 61, a little over 61 years old. And that pediatrician had predicted he would die by the time he was 30. He predicted that he wouldn't do anything with his life. He wouldn't be able to walk, talk, do anything productive. While Ralph went on to have an over 20-year career at a local hospital. His bosses loved him. Everyone he worked with loved him. He went all through the special education system. He learned how to ballroom dance. He became an avid reader. And in fact, he did so well in elementary school that his public school teacher at the time called my parents into a conference to request to bump him up to a slow learner class because she felt that the class that he was in was doing him a disservice because those children were going to drag him down just due to the severity of their needs. And Ralph was so high functioning that she felt he wasn't being challenged enough. And my parents did that, and he went through the slow learners program in elementary school, went on to special education in public high school, and had a great social life, had great teachers. Then he went on, as I said, to have a 20-year career, more than a 20-year career, at a local hospital where he made friends with his coworkers, went on work trips, social events, had a great friend named Tim. God rest his soul. Ralph was devastating when Tim passed away in 2004, but he and Tim were buddies, and they would do everything together, hang out at work, go out to bars, go on work trips, ski trips, cruises, all kinds of things. So again, Ralph had a very full, productive, and happy life, was loved, brought joy to everyone he knew, and actually I do feel sorry for people who think the way that pediatrician back then thought. And I know we've come a long way, and I'm very grateful for that. When you study the history of the world, people who had any kind of disability were not treated very well in pretty much any culture. So I'm glad that we've progressed beyond that. And we've had Special Olympics now for several decades. There's much more acceptance and there are so many dedicated teachers who work with these children. And I just want to say that my own cousin Anne became a teacher's aide and had a great career working with special needs children. So Ralph inspired a lot of people, including my brother Mark, who we're going to talk to today. So I'm very excited to welcome Mark to share his True Voice story concerning his relationship with our brother Ralph DiGiovanni. So I'm here with my wonderful brother Mark for National Down Syndrome Awareness Month. He wants to talk about Ralph. So Mark, I just want to start by asking you, like, you were pretty young. You were like, what, 18 months old when Ralph was born. What's your earliest memory of Ralph, and what did you observe about him, or did you know anything was different about him?
Well, we were so close in age. I really didn't notice. To me, I was a little kid, so nothing different. I just had a brother, and we just hung out. We were so little, and you grow up, and you pal around. It was the same stuff. Play with each other, play with friends. No different, not different at all.
I think part of that too, I think mom and dad did not treat him any differently, so he was always involved with all of us. And I think that's really what helped him. Dad always said that having an older brother like you and then three younger siblings really helped his development.
Yeah, because he would see me do things. We'd do things together. He had family members around him who were great grandparents, great grandmother who worked with him. Everywhere we lived, I mean, everybody just treated him like the rest of us. He got included in parties and things, so it was no different, except he was the superstar.
Yes, he was. He was. So tell us about some of your favorite memories of Ralph, because you guys were very close and you used to tease him mercilessly, but it was fun, good natured, like loving teasing. There's a difference. It wasn't cruel, but there's some pretty funny stories. So I just want you to share some of your favorite memories of him.
One of the ones, and Paul was in on this too, we would ask him a question: Japan is bigger than China. And he would answer, and then we say China is smaller than Japan.
You
And
know,
we'd mix it up, and he would get so mad. And then, the way he loved wrestling was hilarious.
I know.
I took him to Hulk Hogan was his original. I don't know if it was his original, but one of his early wrestling heroes. And I took him with our cousins Nikki and Johnny to the old Spectrum to see Hulk. And Hulk had these T-shirts that they were selling, which had like these holes in them in the front because Hulk would rip his shirt. So we're watching these matches. Now it's Hulk's turn, and the WWE, the Hulk comes out, the bad guy comes out. There's a big entrance, and of course, the way they stage it is the bad guy starts winning at first, and Hulk's in trouble, and Ralph's not real happy. And then, of course, you could see it coming. All of a sudden, Hulk gets a burst of energy, and he turns the tables. And Ralph got so excited, he ripped the shirt off, and he's waving it over his head like a terrible towel. And he wrapped it around the head of the guy in front of us. And the guy at first was like, whoa. And he turned around and he saw Ralph and he started laughing. So it was cool.
Yeah, he loved wrestling. And I remember, was that Miss Elizabeth? Was that Hulk Hogan? I don't know, because I didn't like wrestling.
No,
But I know he
that
loved
was
wrestling.
that era. She was with somebody else. And then he would have wrestling parties at mom and dad's house. The guys from the hospital would come over and they cheered like it was a football game. It was hilarious.
It was fun. And he had a lot of work friends. I mean, I've talked about
A
before
ton.
how, like, he had such a great social life through
Well,
work.
he had
And
the best social life. And the other great thing was the dude was like the mayor of Realville, as Rush used to say. You go somewhere and everybody knew him. The Phillies game.
true.
One time we were at Alan Maris's condo in Wildwood, and
Cousins.
it was
Yeah.
Al, Ralph, Dad, and I in the hot tub. And we're there. There's other people there. Well, in our tub there was room for a few more people. So this older guy walks in, sits down. He's not there 30 seconds. He's like, "Yo, Ralph, what's up?"
That's so funny. I know that happened to Dad, too. And I would say maybe about 15, 20 years ago, he was at a Phillies game with Ralph. And I forget what happened, but they had to go to the ticket office for something. And he said this woman looks up, like she was behind the glass. And she's like, "Oh, hiya, Ralph." Like, and that, I think it was after, you know what, it was after he had retired from the hospital. So
Probably,
people
yeah.
still remembered him. He made
And
quite an
then
impression.
one of my favorites is he would take my son Mark to the movies when he was little. And they used to hang out. They get dressed like if it was a pirates, whatever it was called, movie, stuff like that, dinosaur movies, all that wrestling. One time they go and I come over to pick Ralph up, and we're driving back in the car. Mark was like 5 or 6. He said, "Dad, Uncle Ralph lied." I said, "What do you mean he lied?" They were at they went to get something to eat, I guess before or after, and they had dinner and the whatever they had, hamburgers. And then it was time for dessert, and Ralph said to the waitress, "It's my nephew's birthday," and she goes, "Okay, I'll be right back." And he's like, "Uncle Ralph," and Ralph covered his mouth. And he did it because they got I don't know, they got a free cupcake or ice cream or some damn thing.
There's another funny story about Mark and Uncle Ralph at the movies too. Speaking of pirates, I think it was probably like one of the
Oh
first
yeah,
Johnny Depp movies, and they were all dressed as pirates. I'll let you tell the rest of it, but you
with
reminded
the
me when
one where they snuck in.
yeah, yeah, and the whole the movie was sold out, and Mark started crying. And
Yeah, he says, "Don't worry, we'll get it." So they, I don't know, they walked in like they were going to one theater, and then they veered over,
well, he bought
right?
ticket. He says to little Mark, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." And he said, "We'll take 2 tickets for another movie." And then they snuck into.
Yeah, yeah, that was it. Yeah,
He was smart. I mean, he was really shrewd. That's another
very,
thing about him.
very smart. Probably would have been genius IQ level,
Yeah,
but he was a genius in a better way. So
absolutely. I always say he came here. He was exactly who he was supposed to be. And
absolutely,
you know,
and more.
yeah,
He was my hero. He was the best.
he was. He was, and he was an excellent swimmer. I mean, I
Oh my
remember
God,
that
yeah.
too.
That was the other thing when I'd have Mark and the nephews in the ocean with Ralph. He would go underwater, and we're like, where the hell did he go? And then he would pop up like 50 yards away, yeah,
Yeah,
like his mouth open, his eyes red. They're like, "Dad, where's Uncle Ralph?" And there he was. And then the backyard pool, he would lap, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 times
yeah. He had a
underwater.
strong, like strong stroke. I mean,
And
pretty
he was
amazing.
strong. He was muscular. Yeah.
He really was. And you know, since you brought up the kids, I think it's interesting. I do want to talk about like his impact on the next generation because I've talked a lot about like on his impact on us as siblings. But how do you feel he like having Uncle Ralph influenced your kids?
Oh, it was all positive. It was a good life lesson. You learn about a true person versus a fake person. And he was, like I said, the mayor of Realville. He was what he was, no pretensions.
Exactly.
And to me, I always thought if people didn't like him, there was something seriously wrong with him. And there was, maybe one in his whole life, two, maybe.
For a few over the years, a couple bad work situations, but they were like few and far between. Like 99% of
Right.
people recognized him for the incredible human being he was.
Like that lady at the funeral home when we went, and
Yes.
she started crying, and she said something about I remember, like, what was the story? Her name was Lizzie or Izzy or
Izzy.
something.
Izzy. She was a nurse.
Yeah, and
And
this guy wanted. I think the story was this guy wanted to date her, and Ralph didn't like him, and the guy would keep coming on to her. So they were in a. I don't know what they were in a room, she and Ralph, and the guy came in from behind her and covered her eyes, and he said, "Lizzie, let me guess what color your eyes are." And Ralph didn't like the guy, so he was one of the few. He must have been a goofball. And he says, "Lizzie, don't tell them they're brown." Classic.
classic.
And
You
then,
know what?
the Stanley Cup story, I won't do it on here, but
Already
might have
told
been
that story, but yeah.
might have been the greatest of all time.
I want to say, going back to Izzy, when she walked in the room, it was all, I don't want to call it comic relief, but it was just what I needed in that moment because it was just so sad and so heavy. And
Yep.
we were in the middle of making these
Yep.
funeral arrangements. And then she came in and she told a funny story too because Izzy was a nurse at Fitz where Ralph worked. And I guess he would bring up the linens to the department. And she was like, I could hear him down the hallway, Izzy, I got the linens. He would call out. And then another time when they were on a ski trip, but they weren't skiing. She and Ralph were on, I forget what you call those things, like
They
those
did. They
rips.
were not
Not
sledding, but
snowboarding or yeah, not
yeah, they're not snowboarding. It's the discs, I think, or the
I can't think
toboggans
of
or
the name, but
whatever.
yeah, yeah, they were doing
And
that, and he
and
didn't
he
like having to climb up the hill with it. Sorry.
and he used to take his wig off like a hat.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another thing too. I mean, Ralph really dealt with a lot of challenges in his life aside from the Down syndrome. I mean, losing his hair with alopecia.
And he didn't miss
You
a
know,
beat with that.
didn't. No, he really didn't. And then just difficulty walking because his feet were really flat. I mean, like just, but he just handled things.
He
Just
was the
never.
best. Yeah, the only thing that slowed him down ever was the Alzheimer's, which slows everyone down.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had known about MCT oil back then.
A
And
what?
MCT oil and that low carb is actually good for the brain because now they're calling it
Yep.
type 3 diabetes. I wish I had known that back then, but I didn't
Yeah, who
know
knew?
that. That was tough, and I remember. I don't know about you, but I was very angry for a long time that he had to deal with that.
Yeah,
And it
that
was,
was awful. That was the worst part of it. But even with that, it was still good having him around.
and it kind of like stabilized for a few years, and then it kind of went really
Yep.
downhill the last 3 or 4 years, and it was tough. But I mean, he was just. I just remember like if no one else would play with me, Ralph would always play with me, like when we were little. When he just, and I remember he was double jointed. He'd sit like a
Oh,
yogini at the end of the
he
hallway.
walked on his knees.
He'd walk on his knees. He could bend his pinky all the way back. He used to gross me out with that.
And then there was the I quit with the donut. No, the
Yes.
donut he came. They had one too. He said he wanted it.
He loved his
And
sweets, Ralph. He loved his carbs.
yes, he did.
And then I remember too, in his early days at the hospital, speaking of food, that he was gaining a lot of weight because everybody loved him and they would just give him food,
Feed him.
pretzels.
Yeah.
He loved soft pretzels. He loved cake, cookies, all of that kind of thing. Mom, I think finally had to tell people like, please don't do that, because he's gaining too much weight. But then Ralph, I have to say, I think it was after he retired. I mean, he put himself on a diet, very
Yep.
disciplined, lost a ton of weight, and he looked great. And then unfortunately, like the Alzheimer's, anyway, it did what it did in the end. I do want to say something about that though, not to make it too sad. But I remember when we were all there and hospice was wonderful. I was just so relieved that he knew who I was and he hugged up and he knew who you were, he knew who everybody
Yep.
was. And I just remember thinking in all that emotional like chaos that I wish everybody could die like that because at least he was surrounded at home by family and
Yep.
it was as tough as it was, and I know it was tough. It
Yeah, it was
also
pretty miserable.
but I was grateful that we could all be there to say goodbye, and it was very hard. But I don't want him to be remembered for the way he died. I want him to be remembered for
Exactly.
his life.
But
So,
he
well, our famous story was, when the movie Grease came out. We loved that movie, and that whole summer, we just entertained ourselves all day long playing that. You're the one that I want, and
yes,
how we
yes,
had those two steps going from Dad's office into the game room, like
into the
those were the
game room.
funhouse steps, and we would just reenact that whole scene like over and over again. He was so funny. He was so demonstrative.
Yep.
And we entertained ourselves. I have to say that too. I mean, we just all day long, and he was always up for anything. He was so funny. I remember, gosh, anybody under 50 probably doesn't remember long distance and how expensive it was. But we had a friend. I'm going back years now. Ralph was pretty young, like 7 or 8. But remember when he used to call Mary Collins in New
Yeah.
Hampshire? We lived in Pennsylvania, outside of Philly, and he was calling, had these long conversations with her, and he ran up this long distance phone bill. Now we don't have to worry about it anymore with the internet, but I remember that. That was pretty
That
funny.
was funny. But everywhere he went, he was the star. Like we go on a retreat at Malvern. He was the master of ceremonies at Malvern. One guy referred to him as the legend.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, just explain what that is, the Malvern retreat.
Yeah, it's a Catholic retreat house. It's a weekend retreat where men go, and there's mass and lectures, and you can walk the grounds, solitude. It's really cool. And he went for God about 30 years.
It's Father's Day weekend that you guys went, right?
Father's Day weekend, yeah.
Yeah. Now here's another funny story. Speaking of Malvern, they have, they'd feed you, you'd have meals, but it was already like pre-done. And Ralph, one time thinking it was a restaurant, didn't he ask somebody for a hamburger?
And he was like the only one. They'd find stuff for him to make him what he wanted.
Now, I think the one thing he didn't like was having to get up in the middle of the night or very early.
Yeah, we used to have to get up to go to adoration, and he used to get pissed.
Oh my gosh, he was.
And it was good because at the time there were a lot of cousins there. There was a whole group of us. So he palled around with everybody. And I still go, and to this day, like last year, many people come up to me, man, we miss Ralph. Ralph would do this, Ralph would do that. Remember, Ralph went here, Ralph went there.
Well, I have to say, I mean, going back to his death, when I put that obituary on Facebook, I had people reaching out to me that I had no idea who they were, messaging me about how wonderful he was. In fact, Mom just recently was at the casino and bumped into these people that used to, and they didn't know. I guess it had been years since she'd seen them. And there were 3 different people, I think, that day that their eyes filled up with tears. But he made that kind of an impression
Oh,
on
tremendous
everyone.
impression. Like my first job was with a law firm in media in the 80s. And Steve Moss, one of the partners, I hadn't seen Steve in years. He wrote a long tribute on Facebook. But that's, the impression that he made on people.
Absolutely. I think that Ralph had this gift for bringing the best out in people. He was really disarming, and I just think, I've said this before, but I think in a way, like having Down syndrome took away he didn't have any inhibitions because of the Down syndrome.
None.
Like he would just walk in anywhere and just talk to people. I know people that do not have Down syndrome that won't walk into a restaurant alone or into a party by
Yes.
themselves. And he had none of those inhibitions that other people have. And it was pretty amazing. He could make friends anywhere, and talk to anybody.
Yeah, he was absolutely. He did it all the time. Like the elevator operator, the nasty guy at the hospital.
That story. Tell that story. That's a good one.
I think of the deal was Dad would see the guy every day, and the guy would just scowled at everybody. And I don't know if I remember the story right.
One day Dad gets in the elevator, and I remember this one.
Do you remember? I don't remember whether they got on together or it was Dad by
No,
himself.
it was Dad by himself, and this guy was miserable. He never talked to anybody. He would just run the elevator. People would get in. He would scowl. You'd say good morning to him. He wouldn't answer. I forget what his name was, but one day Dad gets in the elevator, and I think it was just Dad and this guy, the elevator operator. And so, closes the door. They're riding up or down or whatever they're doing, and he turns around and he looks at Dad and he says, "Is Ralph your boy?" And Dad was like, "Oh my God, this guy is actually talking to me." And he said, "Well, yes, he is." And he said, "That's some boy you've got there."
Yeah, that's
So,
amazing.
pretty incredible. Yeah, I mean, there were very few people that Ralph could not affect in a positive way. Very few people. And like you said, there's something wrong with them.
People that little kids love and dogs love
Yeah,
are normal people. The rest of them.
exactly. And to think, I mean, and I said this with Mom when I brought her on. She was 28 years old. I think that is absolutely amazing. I don't think she ever gave herself enough credit for making that decision when that strange doctor came into her room. I mean, happened to be by
Oh, that
herself
was
in that
tremendous.
moment.
Yep,
And to have
tremendous.
the presence of mind and the strength to throw this guy out of the room and say, "Stay away from me, stay away from my baby. You're not going to tell me what this kid's going to do." And then to make him do it. And Mom said he hit every milestone like before you did, or even before like the rest of us did when we came along, because they
Yes.
pushed him. And I think that's
Well,
an important point, Mark, because just from a parenting, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I think one of the reasons Ralph did so well, I've said this before, is because Mom and Dad treated him the same way, and that he was loved the same way, but he was also expected to obey the same rules. Like, they didn't make exceptions. There was never a time in my life when
right.
Mom or Dad came to me and said, "You got to treat him differently because he's not," never. And I think that's
Nope.
another big reason why he thrived.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a pioneer. Now, for one of a better term, things are more mainstream. Like I love Tim Tebow. He does that like Night of the Stars or
Night to Shine. It's
yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah, yeah. And he has all and they're Downs, and I guess there's other kids in
All
there.
kinds of special needs
But
people.
it's
Yeah.
really cool.
That's another point I was making, because when you study history, it's horrible. These people were treated like their parents did something wrong. They were a punishment from God. They were less than
Yeah.
human. I mean, even as recently as we're going back to 1959 with that pediatrician, and then the Special Olympics came along. I got to give them credit for that. I mean, things
Yep.
slowly evolved. So I think Ralph was a trailblazer, and right around the time he was born, like we were like right on the cusp of positive change. And
Yes.
thankfully now there's people like Tim Tebow.
Yeah, and I mean, even a little shortly before that, the Nazis would wipe them out.
Yes.
Communists did that. They're still doing it in China.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably do it in Muslim countries. Who the hell knows? But
Yeah, I mean, like, children of a lesser god kind of thing. I mean, I watched way too many videos about the Middle Ages. I mean, he would have been thrown in an institution. He would have been lucky if that was his fate. I mean, it was bad. I'm grateful that he was born when he was. That Mom took and dad, really. She had the supportive dad and the extended family. And I think he did really well because of, my mom talks about great grandma, how she really like would make him
She was,
walk.
I have a vague recollection of her holding him by his ankle, standing behind him and moving his feet, moving his feet. And then, we lucked out. I guess Springfield Township at the time had a good public school system. And he had some great teachers, Mrs. Izumi. I think Miss Johnson was another one.
Remember Miss Johnson? Yeah, I remember. It's so funny you said that. I just want to say, I remember maybe it was his birthday, but I went with mom. I was really little, and we made cupcakes or something. So I guess it was Ralph's birthday, like for his class. And it just struck me, like how much better off he was. I mean, I felt so bad for some of these kids. And there was this little boy, Arthur, who was in a wheelchair. I don't remember this kid. He had red hair. He was so sweet. I don't know why. I was like 3 or 4. I don't know why this stands out to me, but I remember thinking, wow, like Ralph just seems. I'm not in my 3-year-old head. I didn't use the word advanced, but he just didn't seem like he truly belonged there. And then at one point, Mrs. Izumi brought mom and dad in and said, "You know what? I want to ask your permission to bump him up to a slow learners class because he's not getting challenged here."
Right, right.
You know,
No, they had tried him in St. Dot's first, and that was a little. Probably they could have brought him back in. I bet if they brought him in 3 grades later, he might have done all right. But I mean, it worked out perfect.
yeah. And I don't think they were equipped to handle that. I think the special education system was awesome, and he
Yeah, because I
was.
remember I was in 2nd grade. He was in first. Like the first week, he would cry, and a nun would make me go up
Aw.
and sit with him, and then I would go back there.
God. I didn't know that. Thank goodness, like Miss Johnson and Mrs. Izumi seeing his potential and asking mom and dad, "Hey, Mrs. Izumi, can I bump him up?" And then Ralph took piano lessons from her husband until
Yes,
he
I
got sick.
remember that. Yep.
And my God, he was a voracious reader. I mean, he loved John
He,
Grisham,
yep,
Dave
he read,
Baldacci.
loved to read, loved movies, loved wrestling. He knew movies inside out. Like he would say, this plot is good, the acting's bad. He liked the horror movies. We'd bug him about lines from movies, like
Oh, Silence
Witness,
of the Lambs. I remember that. Mark, do Clarice. He used to do.
Clarice. And I would get him with Witness, book, Time for Milking.
I
And if you
remember.
remember, even at the Mark, when he was sick and we'd go visit him, Mark says, "Dad, he still answers to that." I would go book, and he would say, "Time for."
Funny.
What was the other one? There was a vampire movie that he liked, and
I
there
hate
was
those.
a line. It's really dumb. Like the kid knows there's a vampire, and I don't know. The vampire makes this kid's friend a vampire. So now the friend is in the kitchen of the kid's house going after him, I don't know. Somehow he breaks into the house, and he sees a note on the oven. This is the newly formed vampire kid, and he's waiting for his friend to come home, I guess, to attack him. And he reads the note on the oven, and he goes, his dinner's in the oven. And I would get him with that all the time. And he knew that till the end, too.
How he watched all this horror, I can't watch any of that stuff. I'd be up all night, and he could watch that stuff, never bothered him. But and he also taught me he just appreciated, like, if you when you took Ralph to a movie, it was like giving somebody $1 million. Like, he was so excited, like he just really appreciated the simple things in life. He was just happy to be around the people he loved, doing whatever. Um, Never complained. I mean, he never, never, never complained. That's another thing. Like, why me?
No,
My
never.
feet hurt. Why can't I walk as fast as everybody else? Like, he just never. No, in fact, he was just determined. He would just keep up with everybody, whatever we were doing, and just And I think that he had an effect probably on all of our friends too. Growing up and even older. I never had a friend. None of us ever had friends who said, "Oh, I don't want to be around him," or ever
No,
were afraid of him or anything.
no, I don't remember. And one time when Mark was little, they were going to the movies, and his friend Kevin came. And Kevin said, and it wasn't mean, he just said he looks different or something. He said, "Hey, that's my uncle," you know. And then Kevin, well, we went to the wrestling with Ralph, and yeah, he wasn't a mean. He just, he'd never seen a kid or a guy that looked that way.
That's understandable too. I mean, but I do remember like there were kids. I remember one time when we belonged to Springfield Swim Club. I was 5 maybe. We were standing in line for the snack bar, and these two boys who were probably like 12, 13, whatever, were like making faces at him and all this kind of stuff. And I kept saying to them, leave my brother alone, leave my brother alone. And they wouldn't stop it. And I finally just pushed them. I was so pissed. But like those occasions were really few and far between, because
Yes.
most people were very accepting. So I think when it did happen, I think it hit even harder because I just wasn't used to it, because most people were very accepting and loving toward him. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and why not? I mean, really, I just consider it a privilege to have been his sister.
And we were out. We were young, and at a restaurant, and these people were staring at him. So I said, Paul, let's stare back with our chew with our mouths open, and we did, and that cured that pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it, when it did, the times that it did happen, but some people just don't know any better. Or maybe
And
that's,
to this day, I love running into Downs people. I'll make it a point to say hello to them.
what makes me so happy when I go to the gym. Now, not necessarily Downs, but there are people working there who have special needs, and
Yep.
I am so happy to see them there. They're so happy. They're always like the most exuberant, and they greet you when you come in.
Yep.
Publix, where I live in Florida, they have a couple Downs people working there doing, bagging the
That's great.
groceries. So sweet.
Like
And
Produce, the movie.
yes. Well, that's another thing too, even in pop culture now, movies what was it called? Produce. It was called Where Where Hope Grows.
Oh, is that? I thought
Somebody
his
forgets,
name
but
was, they called him Produce.
called them Produce. It was kind of a low budget. I think it was a Christian movie, Where Hope Grows. But it was fabulous, and the effect that Produce had on that guy that was like a washed up baseball player, was going nowhere fast, was drinking
Yep.
too much, wasn't paying attention to what his daughter was doing. He was a single parent, and just the effect
Yes.
that relationship had. What a beautiful movie.
And
And
I
the other,
love the way, what did he know? He knew the weight or
the
something of all the fruit. The
there's the
numbers.
code, yeah, those codes that they put on, with the scan. I don't know what you call them.
Like you would say kumquat, and he'd say
Yep.
619432 or
That
something.
reminded me so much of Ralph, and like how he would get pissed because he wanted to be employee of the month,
Yes.
and he would get pissed. And
And the way his boss said he's the only one that knew all 6,000 items in inventory.
exactly. And then the other movie that I saw recently was called Peanut Butter Falcon, which reminded me of Ralph. Well, not just because the guy had Down syndrome, but he loved wrestling. So that was. And did you ever see that one?
I never did, no.
That's a good one. You should check it out. But it was very good. Same similar structure where this guy is kind of like washed up. It takes place like in North Carolina and like into Florida along the coast, and you have this guy who's he's feeling guilty about the death of his brother in a boating accident, thinking like it was his fault. He's another one going nowhere fast. I can't remember the name of the character that had the Down syndrome in the movie, but the state of North Carolina had him in a nursing home because he had no family, and Dakota Johnson played his social worker. And he was pissed because he was like, I'm young. I don't want to be here. He was like 22, I think, the character in the movie. And the actor was great, by the way. Both actors. The one that was in Where Hope Grows and the one that was in Peanut Butter Falcon. And she would say, but I forget his name right now, the name of the character. She would say to him, Zach, let's say, you have to stay here. I don't have any other place to put you. And he was rooming with Bruce Dern, played like this older guy, resident of this nursing home, and they were
Right,
roommates.
right.
It was hilarious. So I don't want to give away the whole movie, but the scene where he escapes was so funny. Bruce Dern gives him like all this lotion, and he gets the bars on the windows, and they manage to pull them apart just enough
And
so he can sneak through, and he greases himself up, and he's just down to his underwear, and he sneaks out. And then the movie goes from there, and that's how he meets up with this guy who's down on his luck, mourning his brother, going nowhere fast, and the story goes on from there. I don't want to give it away, but again, the theme is just the effect that this person with Down syndrome had on someone else, and I think it brings you outside of yourself.
Yes.
And you realize that there's other people in the world that need help or may have, it makes you grateful for what you have, and also
Yep, exactly.
and just
Exactly.
that person, the way they are, the way they just enjoy life and appreciate, like I said, the simple things. And anyway, it's a great movie. It has a good ending, but it involves wrestling, and it made me think of Ralph. And one of my friends recommended it.
Was Ralph didn't even think he had Down syndrome. Remember, there was a show in the '80s. I don't know what it was called, but the character was
Life goes
Corky.
on, Corky.
Corky. He didn't. He's like Corky's an idiot.
Like Corky. No, he didn't
He
like.
didn't like
Life Goes
Corky.
On with Patty Lupone, and I think the actor who played
Oh, was
Corky.
Patty LuPone? And I didn't really watch
Yeah,
it. I
she
just
played
know.
the mom, and Kelly Martin was the daughter. I didn't watch it that much, but I watched. I saw a couple episodes. But the kid that played Corky, I think, was local to the Philly area. I think he was from Devon or someplace like that. But that's pretty. Yeah,
Corky.
he didn't like Corky. It's pretty funny.
But Ralph was a legend. I mean, a lady I used to work with, she lives in Springfield, down the street from Carol, and her nephew has Downs. And when I first went to work there in 2008, her sister, not the sister of the Downs boy, but another sister, worked with Loretta DeJohn at the bank. So when she met me, she says, "I know you. You're Loretta's cousin, and Ralph's your brother." And she would tell her sister with the kid when he was little about Ralph, and now the kid's in high school and he's doing really well. So she sent me a picture, like, forget it, whatever had happened, like somehow he was wanted to go to the prom, and the prettiest girl in the school decided to go with him, like the homecoming queen. So she went with, I think his name is Matt, and she sent me the picture of Matt in his tux and the homecoming queen was a beautiful girl. And you look at the picture, she wasn't doing it as a favor. I mean, she wanted to do it.
Wow, that's a great
So,
story. I did not know that story.
and in fact, when Ralph passed, she didn't tell her sister for a while. I said, you could tell. I said, he was in his 60s. I said, that's, what the expectancy is, but, this kid's in his teens,
I was a little over 61. Was double
which
what
is,
that disgusting
yeah,
doctor told mom or initially.
which is 91 to somebody that doesn't have it. They age about 30 years ahead.
Wow, when you look at it that way,
So I
then
mean, yeah, he had a full run. They don't live much beyond. Now maybe that'll change. I don't know. I saw something online where a couple was Downs got married and had a kid years ago.
yeah,
Did you see
I've seen
that?
that. Hmm. Yeah,
Is the baby Downs? I don't know. Not a baby, but the kid.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I
Which
don't
is
think they would necessarily produce a Downs kid. I don't know though. And now some of them drive. I mean, Ralph was small, so he couldn't drive. That was about the only thing he couldn't do.
I mean, he did everything else. He had his job for over 20 years.
25 or 27, I think it was.
I mean, which was amazing. And then even, mom hired a driver to pick him up from work, and then I mean, he affected them in a positive way, their whole
Yep.
family in the Scolas. So I
The
mean, we could
Scolas,
go
yeah.
on and on like about
Oh, yeah, yeah.
stories. But
The
I mean,
other funny one was Uncle Al was in the hospital and Em was in, and she had like
Daria
two
Anne.
or three couples there. And I was on my way home from work. I said, I'll go see him. So we're all in the room. And Ralph obviously knew they were there. And he's walking by pushing a cart. And Em's like, yo, Ralph. And he was laughing, but he wouldn't turn his head like he had to do his job.
And then later they asked him, Ralph, how come you didn't say hi? He says, I never mix business with pleasure.
Yeah,
Such
right, right.
lines. He did. He was funny. Great sense of humor. And I know Dad, I remember Dad in the mornings when he would go into his room to wake him up, he'd rub his head. He
Yep.
didn't like getting up early.
Kids loved rubbing his head. Yeah.
Work. And so do you think, I mean, having Ralph for a brother, like, how do you think it affected you? Like, if you never had him in your life? I mean, I'm sure you'd still be the same great person, but what do you feel?
No, it was a whole universe I got to experience that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It's just a special thing. It's a great thing.
Well, he really,
And
like,
hopefully, when it happens to people now, that it's accepted that way from the beginning. And it's getting better that way.
yeah, it is. It really is. And I think people realize that it's not the end of the world. I remember a few years back that there was a poem a woman wrote when she had a Downs baby. I don't know how long ago this was, but she compared it to like you're planning a trip to Italy and you're all excited about going to Italy, but then you end up in Amsterdam. But it's okay because Amsterdam is also beautiful.
Yep.
She wrote a whole, and I thought that was like such a beautiful way of putting it. And it's true. I mean, and I'm not making light of it. It's certainly, I'm sure it's a shock. I mean, as it was for mom and dad when it
Yeah,
happened. But I think, I mean, only the man upstairs, like mom likes to say, knew for sure. And I just believe that people like Ralph come into our lives for a specific reason. I mean, when I say that about most people,
absolutely.
but
Yep.
and I do believe that. I mean, I don't want to. How do I say this? I think having mom. I mean, God knew what He was doing when He gave her to mom versus anyone else in
Yes,
the family,
absolutely.
because mom had that
Absolutely.
good combination of like loving mother, but also disciplinarian, and
Yep.
she
Yep.
didn't blur. She didn't um, like make excuses for bad behavior. Not that he was bad, but I'm just saying, little kids do. We all do stuff growing up, like so. She didn't make excuses. Well, he did that because I have to treat him differently. Like if anything, I think maybe she's a little harder on him, or like a little bit more. Just like I said before, just they pushed him more because they really wanted him to reach his potential, and he did. So I think God knew what He was doing, and Ralph always used to tell me, "Mom saved me. Mom saved me." Like he knew,
Yes, it's true.
and she really did. So
And I think the hard thing for parents is, even if they want to go through with it, is that, well, what something happens to us, what's going to happen to the child? Who could I trust? And you don't know.
yeah, and that's gosh, I should have asked mom that question when I interviewed her, because I do think that it turned out the way it was supposed to. That I think it was better. I don't know that Ralph would have handled losing mom or dad,
Yes.
before he went. So I think God knew what He was doing, and I'm grateful that it. I mean, he had a wonderful life, and it was very sad, obviously, but I hated seeing him suffering with the Alzheimer's, and I
Yeah,
remember
that
just
was horrible.
it was awful, and but at the same time, then I would feel guilty, like that whole week that we were around him. Then I would feel guilty because I'm like, oh wait, you're wishing him to die. It was so crazy, just the emotions of that time.
Yep.
But I do think that it would have been very difficult for him. I mean, we would have all taken care of him. That's not the point. But I think emotionally, I don't think he would have been able to handle, especially mom, like if she went before him. So
Right.
I think it worked out in the very best way. And, now he's our angel and he's around.
Oh, he's always around. Particularly when it rains, he's around.
And, people use this a lot at funerals, but I really do believe that Ralph heard, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."
Absolutely. And if we get to the next place, he's going to have a seat of prominence.
Yes. So, is there anything else you want to share about Ralph before we sign off?
You could go on forever. I mean, I can't think of anything. I'll stop doing this and I'll think of 10 things. But he was the best. I'm glad I got to spend that time with him.
And I said this before, but I'm glad that mom and dad had three more kids after him, because I certainly wouldn't be here. Carolyn and Paul would not be here. So,
Right, right.
and I'm just really, it was a privilege, and I'm just grateful that we had him as a brother.
He was tremendous. He was the
That's
best.
that's our True Voice story for
Yes,
October,
it
which
is.
happens to be Ralph's birthday month too. His birthday was October 4th,
Which he
and
would remind you of October
yes,
4th.
and he loves strawberry shortcake. And
Speaking of
up,
birthdays, another funny thing, when he started to get the Alzheimer's, he kept insisting he was 55.
oh, that's right. That's right. Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Now, a couple of stories. My son Mark, who loved him, he loved when I would kid him. We'd go over and I'd say, "Hey, get to work, help mom and dad pay for this joint." He'd say, "I'm retired." I say, "Retired my foot." He'd say, "You got me a settlement." I said, "That's not enough. Get off your ass and get to work." And he used to get mad. "I'm retired."
Dad would tease him too. He'd be like, "Yo, Ralph, why don't you go get a job down at the Regal movie theater?" He goes, "I'm retired. I did my time." I love when he would say that. I did my time.
I
But
did my
wait,
time.
I just thought of a great story with little Mark. I hope he's not going to be mad at me for telling this story. But I was up visiting one summer, and your son Mark was about 5 years old, and Ralph was still working. I think it was like around 2003. This was probably like the year or two before that we had he had to stop working at the hospital. But anyway, so Ralph would come home from work and he would be all disheveled. Like the wig would be over here.
Yes. Yeah, oh, yeah.
He would be exhausted because he worked in material services, so that
He
everyone
worked hard.
just to clarify, and he was pushing around a lot of heavy equipment, taking inventory. He had a pager. If somebody needed something in the ICU, he knew he had to get their stat. I mean, it was a tough job. He loved it, but it was very physical. So anyway, he was exhausted when he came home. And so little Mark was over. And when Uncle Ralph came through the door, he was thrilled. He wanted to play.
Yep.
And he's following her. And Ralph's like, I'm tired. Leave me alone. I got to take a shower. I'm tired. So then Ralph goes in his room and went in his room and he closed the door. And little Mark's throwing this tantrum outside his
Yeah.
door. It was the funniest. And mom, of course, mom was like, Ralph, get out here and play with Mark. And he's like, I'm tired. I need to take a shower. Anyway, it was just pretty funny. Uncle Ralph, I want to play with you. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, he was
But I
fun.
mean, anyway, Ralph took a shower and it was all fine and they played together and it was all good. But he worked hard and
He did.
he had a very productive life. So I only wish that doctor who had told mom he was going to be like a tree trunk and just stand there and do nothing, I wish that he could have seen how well Ralph did. I don't remember his name, but
That moron sleeps with the fishes.
yeah,
He'll
yeah.
be he's gone
So,
and forgotten.
but that reminds me too of something. I want to say this too. Dad, as a doctor, used to say, "I never take away someone's hope," and I'm not talking about false hope. But he said, "I don't always know. Like you give people their options. You
Right.
be honest, but you never want to take away somebody's hope completely. If I don't have to do that, I always try to find something that they can hang on to, or something that they can do. Or I
Yep.
explain everything fully." And that doctor, that pediatrician, took away all of mom's hope.
Yeah, I
They
mean
didn't
that's
care.
criminal. Should lose his license.
Again, just
Now,
thanks.
but things are changing for the better. I saw a thing on, I guess it was on X. This mother has a kid and she's got him in front of the mirror saying, "I'm the best. I'm strong. I'm tough. I can do it." I don't know if you saw that one.
Affirmations. I've
It's,
seen one but it's a father with a little girl saying like, "I am smart, I am kind,
oh, I
I
didn't
am
see that one. This
strong."
is a mom with a little boy. He's got like a bow tie. I
Oh,
don't know,
it's cute.
a couple
There's
of
a
them.
few of them. Yeah. No, that's
And his
awesome.
hair is combed really like Elvis, and he looks good. And
Yep. Well, that's another thing Mom always made a point of, that Ralph, she dressed all of us nicely, including Ralph. She never dressed him differently. He always looked, whether it was school, a holiday, whatever was going on, he always looked nice. He always looked so cute.
yep,
Whatever you and Paul were wearing, like he was wearing something similar. The best. I miss him, but again, I'm just glad that he's not suffering anymore, and we all know that he is in a much better place right
absolutely,
now.
absolutely. I just remember too his 40th and 50th birthdays. The 40th was I think at Lanark,
Drexelbrook,
the Drexelbrook, and
like
then
a
the
banquet.
50th with the Oscars.
Yes,
That was pretty cool. I think so. Yeah,
I'm so glad that we did those parties for him too. They were really special.
yeah, they were. They
Sweet
were great.
memories and just kind of like his night to shine, like what Tim Tebow does.
Yep.
For all those people around the world. It was kind of like Ralph's night to shine, and yeah, he loved his birthday. He really did.
Yeah,
He
he
loved
did.
life. Life.
He did.
He enjoyed it.
And people too. Absolutely.
That concludes, I guess, our memories of Ralph for
Yeah, this was
around
great. I
6.
really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for joining me, Mark. I'm glad. I wanted to get another sibling's perspective, so this was awesome.
And I wanted to do it. Yeah, so this is fantastic.
Everyone, I hope that we've given you hope. If you have a child with Down syndrome, or maybe you found out that you're going to have a child with Down syndrome, it's the beginning of a beautiful journey.
It is. It absolutely is.
All right, guys. Talk
All
to you.
right.
Have a
Take
good.
care.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.